So the number one mistake that I see English learners make is that they rely too much on language memorization instead of language internalization. So what is the difference between these two methods? Typically, what you'll find with memorization is it's just reviewing and repeating keywords, and just like you are preparing for a test. So if you are preparing for a test, what do? You get out the flashcards, you get out all of the very short sentences, writing them down, just really trying to jam it into your short-term memory so that you can actually remember it and recall the information for a test. However, this doesn't work when you're actually trying to learn a language, especially when you're trying to use it to embed this language into your mind, so you can use it for work, so you can use it for your social life, and you can have an automatic response when you're communicating with others. So it's one of the common reasons why you find so many people can get a high written score in their English, like just that checks their vocabulary level, checks their reading level, and maybe checks their listening. But when they take the spoken component, they just crumble, and it's a disaster. And the reason for that is because they typically only rely on language memorization and not on language internalization. So language internalization is when you don't learn words in isolation, you actually learn these words in context, in sentences. So the best tools to do that is through podcasts. Follow your favorite YouTubers, follow your favorite TV series, watch programs. Really, you need to embed yourself in this language. The problem that a lot of people have is that's hard to do when you're super low level. So when you have a super low level, you rely solely on memorization. So you're just reviewing keywords, you're just reviewing grammar points, because that's kind of like the point that you're at. However, what a lot of language learners do is once they get to a little bit of a higher level, they keep using the memorization method, which is great if you're just trying to pass a test. But if you're actually trying to get to a very high level of fluency, you have to then switch to this internalization method, where you are focusing on really seeing words and sentences in context, because without context, your mind's not able to attach the necessary emotion. You're not able to develop the neural pathways in your mind that help you to understand when and how and which words you need to use in which moment. If you rely solely on memorization, you will typically have problems with, okay, well, there are 3 different words that are very similar, but I don't know like when to use each word. When you use internalization, you start to realize, okay, these words are very similar, these 3, but I use that one in this context and this one in that context. Like they have a different emphasis, they have a different role that they play within the language. So that's what you're really trying to focus on, and what you're trying to develop when you're focusing on internalization, because when you internalize the language, you develop automaticity. When you develop automaticity, everything just starts to get easier. You recall words better, you recall collocations better, prepositions, phrasal verbs, all of these things, they start to come to your mind much faster. So memorization, of course we need to remember vocabulary, but what's going to be better? Just remembering things for the short term, or remembering things for the long term? And the way that you do the long term with language internalization is also focusing on the most common words. So when we focus on spoken English, you need to understand all of the common words that we use in the spoken language, rather than just learning some arbitrary and random vocabulary that's not necessarily going to help you. Okay, so I think it's really important that you focus more on language internalization rather than memorization. And I'm going to tell you some of the benefits that you will have if you focus on language internalization. Okay, so the first one is that it actually internalizes grammar rules and grammar patterns. So rather than just reading a textbook and focusing on what the textbook is telling you and trying to understand grammar that way, if you internalize podcasts and videos, and you speak with the teacher, you speak with the coach, you're gonna automatically embed certain grammar rules into your mind because of pattern recognition. So pattern recognition is just when you see something so many times, your mind starts to realize, oh, okay, this is kind of how it works. It decodes it subconsciously. Sure, there are moments where you need to consciously understand certain grammar patterns, but you don't want to learn grammar in this very systematic, robotic way where you're just using your textbook. You want to understand it and internalize it through the context that you're learning the language, through reading books, through speaking with a coach, through paying attention to content that actually gauges your interest. This is what is going to be really important, okay? The next thing is to actually build confidence in communication. So like I mentioned about automaticity, when you are internalizing a language, it really becomes part of you. It becomes part of your consciousness. You have all of these patterns that are just in your mind rather than, and they are being stored in your long-term memory rather than your short-term. If a language is only stored in your short-term memory, you're really not going to get far with it. And that's why everyday repeated practice becomes so important, because the more you can repeat, the more context you see, the more the different accents that you hear and pay attention to, this is going to really help to increase and develop your ability in the language, because you are not just accustomed to one mode, one way. You are accustomed to lots of different varieties of the language and how we use it, and you know, the short and quick and more slang vocabulary, also then with more formal and more professional vocabulary, but then mixed maybe with more casual. So you have all these different modes in the language. So if you focus on language internalization, it's also going to improve your fluency and not just your ability to remember vocabulary, but the vocabulary is going to become active rather than passive. And anyone that's studying a language, you know, you should know this difference between active and passive vocabulary. Passive is, in your short term, it's not used. It's just words that you've remembered for a test. Active, these are words that are embedded into your mind. They are part of you. You understand them in context, and you're very confident to use them. And this is what makes up your language ability. The last one is actually connected to creating long-term language ability. So language skills that are going to help you in the long term, that are going to get you to be able to work in the, using this language. That's going to help you to socialize in the language, and it's going to help you to communicate in the way that you want to in the language. So when you focus on language internalization, it really is this language becoming part of you, not this language just being something that's so passive. A language isn't meant to be learned passively. A language is meant to be learned actively through people, through voice, through speaking with others. This is how babies learn when they are born, and when they are young, they're listening to their parents. They're listening so much and paying attention to every sound, every detail. So internalization is a similar concept, where you really focus on paying attention to podcasts, listening to audio, do some mimicking, do some voice shadowing, do anything to actually move your mouth and start interacting in this language, rather than just relying on these more passive methods. But you should be reading. Pick books that really excite you and interest you. I think people wait too long to start reading in a language because they're scared that they won't understand. But sometimes the way to understand something is you need to start it, and then you figure it out along the way. So I think this is another really important thing when you focus on language internalization. Another disadvantage of language memorization is, one, is stressful. You're trying to recall certain words that are not necessarily important for you to know, but you're learning it just because the textbook tells you that that's what you should learn. When you have to remember, lots of textbooks are outdated, lots of information is outdated. We need to rely on current, up-to-date information of how this language is continuing to evolve. And as well, if you really want to be able to speak quickly and in the moment, and this is what a lot of language is you need to start building that skill to be able to interject, to be able to answer questions, to be able to quickly recall the words, but then to be able to speak. And this is why a lot of people get really anxious when they go out into the real world and they're trying to communicate, and they feel like they're not able to, because they don't have that automaticity. They don't have that quick response, that quick embedded aspect of the language, maybe because they've relied too much on the memorization and not too much on internalization. So if you've enjoyed this video today, guys, you can head to Vallo, that's VALLHO. So Vallo is an English coaching platform where you will receive a personalized plan. You can choose a course and you are going to upgrade your English, and you're going to get to that next level, focusing on language internalization, focusing on bridging the gaps between your weaknesses and your strengths, and helping you to become a better English speaker overall. So I hope you enjoyed this video today, guys, and I will see you all on the next one. Bye for now.